Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you conniving money, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. You can keep your conniving money when you've been a corrupt bum. In a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, never money, never money, money, never money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker, neighbor, neighbor, joker, neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph.
Corporation presents Countryside Laughs, Saturday 23rd April at KAMS Place, Sideline ng Buxton. Showtime 6 p.m. Tickets $1,000. Non-stop laughter. Countryside Laugh.
You know, this is the thing I can't take with you. You guys are like, if I win this lottery money, I don't cast you aside and go on a shopping spree with women or something.
Well, you said it, not me. Nowhere in my argument did I mention anything about women. But that's a sure way of that thinking.
You know, yeah, a woman has said, good. And since you hear about big money, you get different.
Well, we will be fools if we don't get different. And my mama didn't raise a fool.
The Lottery, written by and directed by Sharon Cadogan-Taylor and Ronald Hollinsworth. Don't miss The Lottery.
A very good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. I'm David Hines. I want to welcome everybody this evening to our program. This evening we are going to be hearing from the political parties. We're going to try to make this a regular feature where the parties of the opposition will be given an opportunity to come on to talk about what they're doing, what the positions and the issues of the day, and anything that they would want to talk about. Because, of course, one of the issues that we have had is people complaining that they're not hearing from the political parties. Of course, we've been on lockdown for quite a while. It's now, 2 years since we've been on lockdown. There's word that the lockdown will soon come to an end, and lots of the restrictions are going to be lifted. We'll talk this evening to the representatives of the political party and whether they feel that the time has come or whether it's premature. But we've been on lockdown for these last 2 years, and it's been quite a thing. Political parties have not been able to do much via street activity and so forth. And so we want to talk to them about what they're doing and get their views on what's happening in Guyana. I was making the point yesterday, yes, it was yesterday, that, you know, I just returned from Guyana after about spending 2 weeks, and I was just there 6 weeks before. And every time one goes back to Guyana, one feels as if the place has changed considerably. Given a lot that is going on, a lot in terms of buildings going up here, but it's more than that. It's is that you feel that the society is changing before your very eyes. The flight that I came back on, I would say 75% of the people on that flight were non-Guyanese. And I'm not talking about people from the diaspora going in. I'm talking about people from other Latin American countries, it seems. And lots of Americans who I understand go back and forth to Guyana. So a lot is changing before our very eyes. And everybody knows that I am very impatient with our people for not recognizing that the society has changed considerably and is changing before our very eyes. that we are an oil nation. Whatever happens, and a lot will happen, we are a new society in the sense that things are happening in our country, around our country, about our country, that we are paying scant attention to, and we get bogged down a lot in the back and forth between political parties. I'm not saying that we should not be engaged in that, but we have to understand that if we get engaged entirely on party for party, we will be taken for a ride because things will be happening around us and we wouldn't know. Remember the surprise we were all taken by when we learned sometime around June, I think, that it was regime change taking place in front of our eyes in 2020. We were of course engaged in an election, and we thought it was a normal election between the PPP and the coalition, the PPP and the PNC. We thought it was a normal fight between African Guyanese and Indian Guyanese. And we didn't realize that the world had descended on Guyana and was in effect determining the outcome of an election. And I vowed since then that never again should our country be so surprised at what's happening. We have always been part of geopolitics. We have always been part of an empire. Up until 1966, we were part of the British Empire. And what being part of the British Empire meant is that we were part of what's happening in India and Asia, in what's happening in Africa, in what's happening in Britain, what's happening in the wider Caribbean, because we were part of an empire. Our news came from the BBC. And in a sense, there was a benefit from it because, you know, when I traveled for the first time to North America 40 odd years ago, and I was, I think, in a sociology class. This is 1979-80. And I was the only person in the class that knew of a country called Czechoslovakia. Partly because of being part of that empire. Being Guyana knew what was happening in Europe. As a boy, we would be given Mississippi and Czechoslovakia to spell at school, that kind of stuff. So we were always part of empire and therefore part of the larger world. And we were the first English-speaking Caribbean country in which the European powers in the decolonization period descended on. Guyana was invaded by Britain in 1953. Its first elected government was overthrown after 133 days. And when I was doing my studies for my PhD, I went into the American archives and I found the letter from the US Secretary of State to his counterpart. I think it was John Foster Dulles was the US Secretary of State at that time. Dulles International Airport in Virginia is named after him. Found a note from him to his counterpart in Britain saying that we are concerned about British Guyana and urging the British to take action because they felt that Guyana was going to become a communist state. This is before our first self-government, our first government. But I mean, it was just after the election. The Americans are urging the British to invade Guyana. Cuba had not happened yet, you know. In that same year, there was what is called the Moncada attack by Fidel Castro and some of his comrades. And they were captured and put in jail. And then Fidel and them would get out of jail very early, and they would go to Mexico and reorganize to go back into Cuba, ending with the 1959 Cuban Revolution. But before that, Guyana was seen as the Cuba before Cuba. And one of the consequences of that intervention was that the nationalist movement, which was manifested in the People's Progressive Party, which was the first mass-based party in what is now known as Guyana, where Burnham and Jagan were co-leaders, and you had formidable leaders like Sidney King, J.P. Latchman Singh, Mrs. Jagan, Ashton Chase, Martin Carter, Rory Westmus, Clinton Wong, Jane Phillips Gay, to name a few. There are others whose name don't come to mind immediately. That movement was split in two as a result of British intervention. And we have what is now the PPP and the PNC. That's how they came into being. As a result of that intervention by the British, splitting that movement, splitting our ethnic groups, which we have not been able to repair that to this day. The British and Americans were to return in the early 1960s as the Cold War heated up. As the Cold War heated up, they were to return and once again determine what the shape of the next government would be. The People's Progressive Party was not seen as an option because they were seen as too hardline communist. In the end, the British settled for the PNC as the lesser of two evils. The PNC had declared itself socialist, but had not, at that time in 1964, been seen as communists, and so they were seen as the alternative. The PNC then, because of a change in the political system, I've been talking a lot about political system on this program, and wherever I get a chance. To get the PPP out there, to change the political system from first past the post to proportional representation, thus allowing the PNC and the United Force to come together and form the government. When I said regime change, I didn't mean that they rigged the election for the PNC or the UF. There was no rigging of the election in that sense. What they did was to rig the system and change the system so that you can have a coalition of two parties. Prior to that, the PPP won the vote, but was able to win the government. And the Americans and British intervened and so on. There was a lot of mass demonstrations and so on and so forth. The Americans were to return at the end of the Cold War in the form of Jimmy Carter and said we had 3 decades of this and it has to stop now. And again, they helped to broker an agreement between the PNC and the PPP, allowing for a return to transparent elections, which the PPP won. Hamilton Green will go to his grave believing that that election was fixed by Jimmy Carter in favor of the PPP. He and his supporters took to the streets on election day. But Jimmy Carter and the Americans were able to call Mr. Hoyt and ask him to call off that thing. We then found oil in 2015, and by then the Americans returned again. They returned again to be Guyanese, return again. The Americans returned, and this time they joined forces with the PPP because they faced the agonizing question of who will govern in this new era of oil wealth in which American companies are investing billions of dollars. And they again ask who will govern. And for reasons which are becoming more and more evident, they decided that the PPP was the better choice. And they then sought to exploit our porous electoral system, a bloated voters list, people voting while they're not in the country because they're on the list of registrants. And therefore, being on the list of registrants, their ID card comes into play. And so what they were able to use is use the weak electoral system in order to oust the coalition. I give you that history to say from 1953 to the present, external intervention has been constant in Guyana. Ethnic division has been constant. And authoritarian governance has been constant. The electoral system was changed in '64 to bring about regime change. In 2020, the electoral system was manipulated. They didn't change it, they manipulated the weaknesses. This question about the new voters list is not new. In 2006, the PNC's cry was no voters list, no new voters list, no election. I think that was it. No house registration, no election. So this thing about the voters list goes right back to 2006. The PNC knew in that election the voters list was not fit. 2006 is now 16 years. And the PNC threatened in 2006 not to contest the election. In that year, the PNC did the worst, 34%. The PNC was accustomed at that time to getting about 40% of the vote. They got 34% of the vote in 2006. We are learning from people who were part of the PPP government at the time that it was at that time the PPP looked at migration patterns and they realized that they could not automatically win an election on just ethnic vote. And so they made a decision to exploit and tamper with the electoral system. And they began to do that in 2006. They planted people in GCOM, using the law to put themselves in power. The coalition was able to overcome that in 2015. And remember, in 2015, the PPP said it was the Americans who put the coalition in government. And to this day, the PPP never accepted the results of those elections. Donald Ramotar, the presidential candidate for the PPP, said that he would not accept. They allowed the government to come into power, but they never accepted those results. They thought it was regime change against them. Ramotar will go to Red House last year, October, and warn the PPP about regime change. And so here we are, 2 years after that debacle, after that those 5 months. For some people, what happened in those 5 months is already settled. For some of us, no, it's not settled. That what really happened that caused the 5 months is yet to be determined. 2 elections petitions have been filed. Never before in our history have 2 election petitions been so important. We already know some of the evidence thanks to the recount. We already know about boxes which did not contain statutory documents. We already know because the police gave information about people who voted who were not in Guyana. So some of that evidence that is going to come into the elections petition, we already know. And so therefore, those petitions are extremely important. The PPP never speaks about bring it on for those petitions. They don't want the petition, they're trying everything for those petitions not to be heard. When politicians are trying so hard, when politicians are trying so hard to prevent something from happening, take notice. Take notice. So those elections are not concluded. The Americans have given us a hint, 2 hints. The first hint was when they said the government was installed. They tried to pin that on the opposition. And that term was first used by the Americans in their State Department report. They said that the government was installed. They don't like to say that. They say it's the opposition saying that. And then recently, the USAID report said that the elections were disputed. The Americans have given an in. There's that thing not regular. Then big man would say, and in the villages and in the wards of the town, thing not regular. The government was installed and the elections were disputed. I think sometimes as political people, we are not intentional on what we choose to run with. We should have billboards all over Guyana. Disputed election led to an installed government. Because the other side is, well, they're becoming less and less with that. Only a couple of them are out there talking about this saving of democracy. Comical formulation. It's an assumption that we had this great democracy before, that somebody threatened to derail during those 5 months, and it was saved. So if we had a democracy, it meant the coalition government had to be congratulated. And I have always said that for me, the coalition government was the first non-authoritarian government in our post-colonial history. We've had to deal with authoritarian governance throughout our history. For the first time during those 5 years, 2015 to 2020, opposition people were not systematically harassed. There was no political assassination. People were not prevented from holding public meetings. It was not a perfect government because the authoritarian state remained intact. But the level to which the PPP had taken that state, remember Dr. Thomas talked about the criminalized state. So we had moved from an authoritarian state to a criminalized state where this authoritarian state fused with criminals. So we had moved from the authoritarian state to the criminalized state. What happened to 2015 to 2020 is that criminalized state was toned down. You couldn't bring about fundamental change in the state in 5 years, but at least the fusion between the state and criminals that was disbanded are certainly toned down. Systems were put in place. SARA was put in place to go after those members of the state who had benefited criminally from their position in state and to get back some of the state assets that they had appropriated. Some of them came back and they returned some of the assets. one day, I think, I don't know legally what prevents Sarah from speaking out. There might be some legal barriers. But one day when Sarah tells its story, it will tell you about some of them who actually said, yes, we benefited from state assets, and some of them started to return their assets. It's why when the PPP came in, one of the first things they did was to close down Sarah. So the previous government had begun to reform the state. But the state in those 5 years remained by and large an authoritarian state. But the leaders had some sense of political morality. Supporters of the coalition cussed the coalition for not locking up the PPP when they had evidence as a result of the commissions of inquiry. But they didn't move to lock up the PPP, although they had the legal instruments to do that. So there was a sense that the leaders of that government were not as blatant and were not cruel, were not insensitive as the ones we have now. The ones we have now have the same instruments of power, and just as a whiff, they began locking people up left, right, and center, going back to the hyper-authoritarian state. And so we have to know our history. We have to know our political history. My frustration, one of my frustrations is that we have political activists on both sides of the fence today who do not take time to study, who do not take time to read, who do not take time to understand their own people. In my time, we had to wake up at 2, 3 in the morning and go to political classes. The PPP had their Acrobat political school. The PNC had their political school. The WP had its political school. We had to read and study our country. Today, people walk off the road and become political activists and have not a sense of their own country. They are going to make mistakes. If you don't understand your country, you don't understand your country's place in the world, and you don't understand the historical trajectory of the society, and worse, if you don't understand the political culture, that is your people's attitude to politics, you'll make mistakes. They say that we come on these programs and we cause trouble and we urge people to bring down the government and all kinds of foolishness. I know from my standpoint, my program, this program, our program, is aimed at exactly what we try to do every day. We try to inform people, and we try to turn that information into a form of education, and we try to turn that education into a form of mobilization. Because mobilization is not just mobilizing people for street activity. There are all kinds of political activity that one mobilize people. Ideas, political ideas are as important as political street fighting. Big ideas. Some of them are bad ideas. Nazism was a bad idea. But it's big ideas. What they're fighting in Ukraine there is over the big idea. Who should control Europe? Russia is talking about the motherland. America is talking about its historical right based on manifest destiny. America's tentacles all over the world, America coming into Guyana or wherever it goes into, is not because America is greedy, so goes the story, it is because God has endowed Americans with a special talent. They and they alone know how to keep the world safe, how to keep the world productive. That is manifest destiny, a big idea. And we sometimes play around with ideas. Oh, you all talk too much. It's another talk shop David Hines have there. Big ideas, whether it's Pan-Africanism, whether it's non-alignment, whether it's a cooperative republic, big ideas matter. And we play around sometimes. Our foreparents used to sit under those trees at night and plan. And that is why when they were able to seize their power in 1838, within a matter of months, they were buying lands and creating villages. It didn't drop from the sky. They had been imagining that. The creative intellect and the creative imagination. They didn't go to universities, but they had a sense of ideas. What it means to be a free human being. That is why they were able to get out of that plantation and create villages and leave that lasting legacy for us. The humanization of the wild coast. And the coast, every now and again, the wildness of the coast returns. And we have to tame that wild coast, as our foreparents did. And we're going to tame it by ideas and action. Ideas come out of action, and action come out of ideas. There is a relationship between the two. All you all do is talk, according to some of our people, Caribbean people, yak, 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 yak. As David Rudder said, that is the root of our problem. Ideas lead to struggle, lead to action. And out of that action come fresh ideas. Let nobody tell you all about this thing that you all talk too much. Talk. Ideas are extension of action. As you're pushing back, as you're protesting, you're leaving footprints in the sand for others to follow. Good night. Welcome to Politics 101. I've given my piece, and now it's time for my guests to come in and have their say. Tonight, we have members of the three opposition parties. People's National Congress is going to be represented tonight by young Vice Chairman, Mr. Sherwin Holder. No stranger to this program. When he was running for his position, I made it clear that I thought this young man has places to go. It was not my business. I didn't belong to the PMC, so I couldn't vote. And I should not have been meddling in the party's business. But I saw a young talent, and I said, here is a young talent. I hope he does well today. He's the second most powerful leader in the PPPs. Welcome, Sherwin.
Good day, Dr. Hines. Thanks for having me. Thanks for those kind words.
Thank you so much, my brother. Takumo Gunse, my big brother from the WPA. I came into politics as a little boy in the 70s, listening to Takumo Gunse, Sase Omo, and Walter Rodney, and Clive Thomas, Rupna Rhyme, Josh Ramsamy, Walter Rodney, Yusi Kwayana, Andaye, Bonita Bone, and others coming to Buxton and speaking at the line top. And my political upbringing has been influenced largely by these people who took a different view of our independence in the 1970s, who
challenge the established parties to say, what is this independence going to be? Is it going to be rum mixed with brandy? Is it going to be rum mixed with water? Or is it going to be the real deal? And we know that we had that concourse of ideas, that struggle between the left radicals and the governments all over the Caribbean, not just Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent. We had that period. The Comogons has been a regular in recent times. I don't know if Kemraj Ramjatan is, yes, Kemraj. Kemraj is an old timer. We're about the same age, and Kemraj I first heard of in the PYO, heard of someone who was prepared in those days to challenge the orthodoxy of the PPP's ideology. I mean, some of us were saying, you know, all the parties, all the three major parties in those days were, you know, some kind of Marxism. The PPP was Marxist-Leninist. Sorry, the PNC was Marxist-Leninist. The PPP was communist. The WPA called itself independent socialist. And everybody accepted. And it's a real strange case. We have never had a real conservative party that helped sway the UF, you know, talked about a little bit of capitalism back in the 60s. It was more about mercantilism and people buying and selling and so on. But Kemraj was one of the first persons in the people to begin to raise questions about the nature and the degeneration of that working class commitment. I noticed Donald Ramatar and others are now saying that the PPP has moved away from being a working class party, Kemraj. And then he said that 20, 30 years ago. Brothers, thank you all very much. And I'm a little bit talkative tonight, you know, the little teacher in me. And I think the audience sometimes needs the background. So what we're going to be tonight, we're going to be talking about what the parties have been doing. Because in effect, this is the APNU AFC here, right? With all due respect to the other components of the APNU, the APNU was really the WPA and the PNC, really. And once the WPA withdrew, the APNU was over. I mean, for all intents and purposes. And then once you had that formulation, we move to the APNU AFC. So in a sense, what we have represented here is the coalition. Now, let me talk with you. I understand that they're going to be removing all the restrictions, the COVID restrictions, in another couple of weeks. What's your party take on it? Is it premature? Is it time that those restrictions are removed?
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Yes, we think that it's premature. Any such decision has to be guided by facts, by statistics. And I don't think we've seen the statistics which suggest that there should be a full opening of the country. I understand this economic situation and so forth, but any decision taken has to be guided by irrelevant statistics, which should suggest that it is safe to reopen the country and drop all these guardrails that were put in place to protect the citizens of this country from COVID. We've noticed over the last few weeks that we haven't been really seeing any updates as to the hospitalization and deaths from the COVID-19 disease. So, you know, I get the sense that it's a deliberate act over a period of time. It's very systemic. And this is what it has led to. This was always the intention. What we notice is that this government is taking its lead from developed countries like Europe, countries in Europe like Switzerland and the other very developed countries. What they're not considering is our specific situation, our particular situation here in Guyana. We don't have the kind of systems and mechanisms in place to ensure that the citizens are well protected. I can tell you this, I spoke with some persons in Switzerland just recently, and I believe they removed the requirement for wearing masks, and that resulted in a lot of persons who would have contracted COVID before, contracting it again in a mere matter of weeks. So I'm yet to be guided by the statistics, by the facts which inform this decision.
Thank you. Let me bring in Kemraj, because Kemraj was one of the architects of those measures that eventually were put in place. He was the Minister of Public
Security,
and was very much part of it. Kemraj, are we moving too fast?
I want to believe so. Look, this is going to be a difficult question to answer if you don't have the statistics. And I must say that the government has been somewhat sketchy with the statistics, because we used to get it before. And of course, we don't have anybody there at the committee, the COVID committee. So I have not been brought. But what I am seeing internationally is that even in America, more patients with COVID are now flocking back to hospitals. And inside of Europe, there has been an upsurge of COVID. And the Omicron virus, the variant, especially. And for us to simply go back to almost full-fledged openness is not going to be the correct thing, in my opinion. But I and my party is telling the public, please do the mitigation measures. Don't go into big crowds. We are urging them with that. Wear your mask, and especially ensure that you wash your hands and the sanitizing that is necessary and so on. Because quite frankly, I am not too certain. And I want to say that even when we had the statistics too, the doctors that we have our advice from, and one is an extraordinarily qualified one from New York, Dr. Sumar, he has indicated to me that those statistics, you multiply by 2, the deaths and even the hospitalizations and then the problems with lungs and all of that. That is a neater way of knowing what is the reality, because it is always under scored, the under that I'm looking for here. It is something that is not properly statistized. Properly, the numbers is a little bit under as against the real thing. So we feel that this should not have been the case. And soon as they're now thinking about this, we see in the European countries, and we got people coming in from America and all over the place still. The flights are in and so on. So we are going to catch it from some other country if we don't. Brazil is the same problem. So I think we were a little too premature. Yes, I will give that opinion.
Before I go to Ogun, Kemraj, I've had you on so many times, but we have never really talked about those early days when you knew nothing. All you knew is that this thing was taking over the world, and going back to February, March of 2020. And you had to deal with that situation as a small country that is vulnerable to these global interventions. Tell us what was it like during that period? What was the method you guys used to decide how you are going to handle this stuff?
Well, the method, we had to get the advice, and we wanted it from the best sources. And because, quite frankly, we didn't know much about it. And so we asked the PAHO people and the WHO and then the CARICOM specialist. We had our Minister of Finance, I think it was Walter Lawrence then, who was also in communication with them all the time. And we had a set of doctors in Guyana that we relied on through the Ministry of Health. And as best as possible, all that we could have done based on their advice, tightening down the border areas in the interior, doing the curfews, knowing very well that Guyanese hated curfews. We had to tell them, and ensuring that the police also get into the act of enforcing the regulations. We charged quite a lot of people, especially when they were playing the fools with themselves and with the other members of community who they could have caused to get the contract the disease. And so it had to be a lot of encouragement. I think it was a 3 E's, the president said: education and then enforcement. And it worked, because we realized with the deaths that were happening all over the world and in Guyana that we had to be very, very assertive, and we had to be almost draconian. And it was some businessmen come trying to lobby us and so on, that their business. We said, look, take your profits will come later on, but let us look after these hospitalizations, these cases. Let us lessen it. And that is why we closed down literally at very early hours in the evening a whole lot of places, some of whom tried, very, very well to go and break the law, violate it, and we locked them up. As a matter of fact, a number of people were locked up. And then that's, kind of helped those public relations stunts too, taking people off the seawall when they were gathering in large gatherings here and trying to break them up and so on. All of that helped, because they said that they didn't realize we meant business. And that is how you got to do this thing. Otherwise, so many people will die, so many hospitalization, which has a tremendous economic cost, and then stress for your nurses and your doctors. And so that is why we had to close down schools and everything, And I think we made the right decision. And that's how you got to deal with these things, public health issues.
Reopening the country is concerned.
That's dangerous.
Ogunse, can you? Yes.
Okay, I want to join with my colleagues and in saying that I think, and we in the WPA feel it's premature to open up the country back in the way in which the government seems to be suggesting. I also want to join with them in expressing our concerns about the reliability and the absence of the scientific information, because all over the world, success in defeating this virus is guided by science. And in Guyana, we haven't been doing good in terms of identifying and doing a lot of trace, like how in China, those countries, they track down, persons who are affected in COVID. They try to find all the possible contacts they may have made, during a given time. We have not done any of that, in my mind, as far as I know, to any significant effect. Therefore, one could assume that we don't have a good understanding of the gravity of the virus in the society. I haven't seen recently what is the government judgment in terms of our national immune development and tolerance to the virus, because all of those are important indicators as to how to deal with the virus. But what I find very interestingly, even China, which countries in the world agree, given its population size and the fact that the virus, apparently raised its head in China in a remarkable way, they have been doing fairly well. In fact, they have less deaths than most of the developed countries in the world and so forth, and they have contained the virus. But recently, we are hearing about, an increase in COVID in China, unprecedented increase by their standards. So this virus is demonstrating that it's not yet defeated. And it has the capacity to resurrect its head. If it could do that in places like China, I can't see why it wouldn't do that in places like Guyana, who is less equipped both scientifically and in terms of our medical resources and institutions to deal with this kind of a pandemic. But what I find of great disappointment, well, I shouldn't even call it disappointment given the nature of the PPP. But one would have thought that the PPP came under a lot of criticism on the way in which they seek to manage this COVID problem. And I think that if the government was serious, it should have convened a meeting of national stakeholders and report the government assessment of the situation and to try to reach some consensual agreement on how we will reopen up, bearing in mind, what we see is happening in the world and bearing in mind what the World Health Organization is saying and so forth and so forth. I thought they would have, a different government would have used this opportunity to bring, more national understanding and consensual agreement on how to open up the country. But the PPP treats Guyana like its personal property, and they continue the dictatorial approach on these matters, which creates unnecessary problems on national issues, which ought not to be very problematic, because our approach to a pandemic like this one, by its very nature, should trigger cooperation, and national cohesion in terms of defeating the virus. Well, the PPP is hell-bent on being the PPP. And I think that we have to, I don't like to behave like a person who believes in the religious approach to these matters. But we really have to keep our hands crossed if they do go forward to open up the country. And we always know that what is driving the PPP is they're trying to facilitate the economic interests of that important constituency in the business sector that support them in the last elections, and they have a big indebtedness to them. But they seem to prepare to sacrifice the national interests to achieve a partisan interest. So I want to say that we have to hope that when they do what they seems to be bent on doing, we just have to hope that the country, for the interest of the country, that the virus don't raise its head once again and don't raise its head in a more vicious way. But we, the WPA, believe that we should have opened up the country in a more cautious way.
In a more cautious way. Takumo Ogunse, executive member of the WPA. Certainly, gentlemen, politics is an outdoor sport, if you may call it that. And these last 2 years have had a tremendous effect on outdoor activity as far as political campaigning is concerned. One of the good things about it is that we've developed new media, such as this one, but notwithstanding what we do here, really at the end of the day, politics is about meeting people, rubbing the flesh, engaging in speaking and listening. Sharwin, how has that affected the PNC? You're a large party, and whenever people out there are talking about more street activity, your party come under the most pressure because you are the big party. How has this pandemic affected political work?
Thank you, David. It certainly has. As you rightfully indicated, there is a general expectation from supporters that you will be more in the fields and more on the ground. In fact, we campaign to be more on the ground and in the fields and meeting persons face to face. So it's challenging. It's quite challenging, but we're adapting to it. We've embraced technology. We engage a lot on Zoom and the other platforms. Of course, we have these platforms where we can also disseminate information on these various programs. In our party, we have a number of persons who control media programs. And so we use that to disseminate our information. We use other technology, other applications, WhatsApp, and all the other applications to disseminate our information to the public. But as you rightfully said, nothing beats that face-to-face arrangement. And so we've been trying our best to be on the ground and while at the same time try to adhere to the COVID guidelines and the COVID rules, etc. But certainly it has posed a challenge for us. But on the bright side, I believe that it has forced us as a party and as a country as a whole to embrace these new technologies and these new ideas. You no longer have to wait, to until everybody come who has to go to work, who has different things to do at home and that kind of thing, and can't make a meeting in the flesh. You can now, have it on Zoom. So if there are advantages that we capitalize on. But again, some of these issues we just have to be on the ground to get a real feel of what is going on. It cannot happen from in the office here. You must be on the ground, and people want to feel you and have that face-to-face exchange. You don't have. There's a wider public that doesn't. In this age and time, a lot of persons use this social media platform, WhatsApp, and so. But there's a large contingent that still don't have a cell phone or don't have the type of phones that have these kind of technology. So that's certainly something that we're looking at, and you have to get out in the fields to reach those particular groups.
Mm-hmm. I know that last year around July, August, your party had been going out on Sundays, on the weekends, going quietly into the villages. I know that because sometimes we would turn up in a village and they say, Kemraj and David and Cathy, they just leave here, especially in the East Bobbies and West Bobbies area. We turn up to eat at a shop, the AFC man shop. And he said, you all just miss them boys here. I don't know how much you were able to continue that, but I'll ask you the same question. How this period of lockdown, how has it negatively and positively affected your party's political mobilization?
Well, I will tell you, it has affected it negatively because a lot of the people are being bombarded by a lot of the meetings on the ground and on social media by the PPP and on the various radio stations and TV stations that their news are carried on. And being in the government, they also have some extra time with the various news broadcasts and newspapers. But we tried as best to do the outreaches as we caught up a couple of times in Berbice when we were there. But I think that we still have to do so much more. And notwithstanding the crisis of a COVID, the people want to hear our narrative. The people are being bombarded by the PPP's narrative. And the PPP, if you didn't know that, is a political machine that is very well oiled. It is well oiled in the Hindu community and by certain Muslim brethren now that getting some big contracts and all of that by the Muslim community. I am amazed that when I went to some of those meetings that we caught up there or we missed you, they're saying it, that these friends and family with the big money that are now getting all the contracts, they also come and they talk at the masjid, they talk at the mandirs, and they want that base to be kept intact
notwithstanding, as the people are now asking of us, that we must be there to talk about some of the economics, the high cost of living that the COVID caused, the high cost of living and, the bad situation that the floods of last year caused, especially to the rice farmers. And today, because of paddy prices going down, the hardships that they're now feeling. And so we really got to get down there. But the PPP also are telling some of these people that if you use your bottom house, we gonna mark you. And they got some real renegade PPPites. And that is why the AFC's job is a little difficult in these areas, because they mark the people. They got some people who I would have gone to their homes in 2005 when we started off this movement that said, Kamraj, it's a little difficult now because then next thing, when we went there, the two homes at West Barby's outreach, bricks start fall upon the rooftop nighttime. They know it's who, but they know it's because Ramjatan and David Patterson been there. These PPP fellas are rotten to the core, and they do not want any different narrative to reach, especially their quarters or what they feel that they get transport over. And so we have to understand that. I talk to them on the phone. We have an office. We try as best as possible to get some people at the office to come and talk to them. Some of them, because I'm in practice now, a lot of them come in and saying, this is the problem and that is the problem, and they want some legal advice. You're helping out. But I think we have to do lots more groundwork to get them to understand, and we have to come up with our policies too. Because when you go there, they're getting conscious, and they're of the view that what you're going to do about it. All right, we hear that this is what is the problem. What are you going to do about it? And so that is why we have to be far more articulating the policies of the day as to what we're going to do about the paddy prices and so on. And you have to start thinking of the better water management. You got to start thinking about a variety that is going to give, instead of 45 bags per acre, about 60 bags. Nari got to be supported. And all of these long-term plans, you got to tell them about. And then they say, well, that is good. That is a good idea. And once they then realize that you are talking sense rather than the crap the PPP goes and tell them, they say, yeah, Mr. Ramazan, thank you very much. And that's how you do your politics. Because you just don't go to the people to give pie in the sky. Are we going to build one bridge? Are we going to build the road now for Ketro Signal and all kinds of infrastructural works they're telling them? Are we going to create 50,000 house lots? Are we going to create 50,000 jobs? Because quite frankly, the people on the ground from the meetings that we have had, and I told you that we have not gone very many places because of the COVID and a whole set of other difficulties, they're telling us that, look, we don't want to hear all what they're going to do with the oil money. We want to feel the oil money in our pockets, in our belly, and we are not feeling it. And that is what is beating the PPP today. That notwithstanding all this propaganda that they put to the people and how they fool them up the last elections and so on, the people are comparing our 5 years, as you just did.
Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, in a bill tell me money.
My name is Richard.
Money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money, neighbor. Money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, I know what you can have in money.
Joseph, oh me. Morning, neighbor. Morning. Welcome to another morning program. Welcome to another program of the BUXTONIAN Morning Time. This one is called Dickheads. Dickheads. I like the title. Well, I This one is called Dickheads. Abuse and no protection. Dickheads, abuse, and no protection. Good morning to you. Welcome to another program in Guyana where we are now enjoying freedom. Like before the pandemic. Freedom. Pre-pandemic freedom. Tomorrow is Pago Day and we're going to have a ball. All them black Hindus, they're going to have a ball. All them Hindus, they're going to have a ball. Muslims also will partake in tomorrow's celebrations of Pago. I take you a bet. Because it's one Guyana. When it comes to celebrating one Guyana, all citizens get counted. Everybody in somebody's business. Nobody in drinking water mind their own business. Right? Is everybody want some sweet meat tomorrow? But I say, what's sweet a goat mouth? A bit of your backside. Old people say so. What's sweet a goat mouth? A bit of your backside. Keep that in mind. The political powers that be have declared that the restrictions are not necessary anymore. Right? Restrictions are not necessary anymore. You can go out there and you can have fun. You can do as you like, how you like, when you like. To wear a mask now is your choice. Good? To wear a mask now is your choice. To take the necessary precautions is your choice. But I want to encourage you, my brothers and sisters, make wise choices. Make wise choices. Protect yourselves at all times. I'm happy that the restrictions have been lifted. Don't be surprised. I'm very happy that the restrictions have been lifted. I have some business to transact with the National Insurance Scheme for the last 2 years. And I have not been able to do it because I refused the vaccine. And so the restrictions have been lifted. I'll be able to go to the National Insurance Scheme and conduct my business. I hope I'm right. I hope I'm right. And I'm not boasting, because what didn't happen in a year or 2 years can happen in a day. By God's grace, I survived. By God's grace, I survived the virus. I don't want to say I didn't contract it, because I don't know if I contracted it. There were days and time when I felt like, hey, this thing knocked me by. But you know what? Whatever the local remedies were, I recuperated quickly, just like a normal flu. So I assume that it didn't knock me. But whatever it is, I survived. I seriously never did a COVID test. Right? My daughter was infected, and the local remedies worked wonders. Within a week, she was okay. Of course, she had to wait her 14 days, but within a week, she was getting better. So I am saying that, you just have to protect yourselves at all times. Wear your mask. Well, them will tell you you don't have to wear your mask, especially when you're going to be in crowded places. Wash your hands frequently. I mean, personal hygiene is a thing. You should always be washing your hands frequently anyhow. You should be bathing too. Wash your hands frequently. Keep your social distance, 3 to 6 feet. Don't go running up in people's face now. Right? Don't go running up in people's face. It's long while coming your face to talk this name. Keep your distance. Talk your name long distance. Good? Keep that in mind. You take your precautions and protect yourself and your family and loved ones and the community and everything. Because at the end of the day, the removal of these restrictions are more economic than medical. Right? Are more economic than medical. In the first place, putting them in place, in my mind, was more economic than medical. A lot of people benefited from those restrictions in place. If you were to get to the figures, you will see how many private medical labs were certified to do the tests. You will see who own them, what their relations are to government, and how many such tests were done at the exorbitant fees. And so you'll come to find out the real economic benefit. That came to some people in this country as a result of those restrictions. Legally and illegally, a lot of people sold books, COVID vaccination books, and they got a lot of money from it. Right? Keep that in mind. But if you look at what's happening now, we're approaching what Guyanese like to call summer. This is March, right? April, Easter, May, June, then you have July, August. And this is approaching what you call this summer. And so the big fetes are usually hosted in the summer. As a matter of fact, I think sometime soon, they got an artist named Dexter Daps that's coming to this country. The big international artists are usually brought to this country by people who are aligned to the PPP for the greater part. Because they get all kinds of concessions which you don't know about. Right? Concessions which you don't know about. But they get concessions. And profits are split and so on, and government ministers get their cut and so on. So this opening up is to facilitate the entertainment industry to start with. And we'll see what happens in the long run. We'll see how quickly after they will say we have to shut it down back because things are getting out of hand. Let's look and see that. But in the meantime, you protect yourself. You take the necessary precautions. Recognize also that this is not a time for you to go spending what you don't have. If you could scrunch and get a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 which you think you could go and spend at one of these fetes, I encourage you to use it otherwise. Use it otherwise. Use it to put food in your homes. A few weeks ago I said use it to buy some livestock. Because that is what will benefit you in the long run. Look around you. prices are skyrocketing. Some people are now feeling the squeeze of paying $5,700 a bottle of gas, cooking gas. I told you yesterday the price was between $5,400 and $6,000, depending on where you are. And a lot of people are saying we are an oil-rich country, and so we should not be affected by these increased prices for oil. Fuel prices have gone up. And people are saying we should not be affected because we're producing. We are producing, but we are not refining. We are producing, but we are not manufacturing. Understand this. There's what you call a raw input. Right? The raw input. And then there's what you get out as value added. Value added. Good manufactured. Guyana is a country that has been providing the raw input all the time. Our lumber gets exported to foreign countries as just that, lumber. Logs. And then they process them and they re-export them sometimes right back to Guyana as processed lumber, as furniture, as all kinds of things. And the prices quadruple and so on. You pay much, much more for it when it's processed. Our gold, out of the earth, exported, not manufactured, into exquisite jewelry and so on. Right? Keep that in mind. So we are just a supplier of raw materials in this instance. Crude oil, black gold. We don't even see it on the shores. It gets exported from the high seas. And it's processed and it comes back here as gasoline, as diesel, as heavy oil, as all kinds of things. And so we will be faced with the prices that have to be paid for the finished product. Right? Value added. That's what we're paying for. So yes, a lot of us say, oil producing Ghana, we're paying so much for gasoline and diesel and so on. Yes. Because we don't manufacture it. We don't process it. We just extract and sell it, even if we can even claim of doing that. But I agree that the prices should be cushioned. How do we cushion the prices? For the mere fact that Guyana is now getting more for its raw crude, that windfall which comes from the higher price on the market, some of it can be used to cushion the price of the finished product which we have to use. Over in Barbados, for example, Mayor Motley has reduced the VAT on fuel imports, fuel products. Right? VAT has been reduced. There's a cap on diesel price in Barbados. And that is going to be in place in the next 6 months. It means that as a government, Mayor Motley and our ministers and so on are prepared to absorb the quote-unquote loss that will come to the country by collecting less VAT from fuel. That is a leader who is concerned about the well-being of our citizens. She's trying to control cost of living for them. In Guyana, we're not hearing about the government plans to address this issue of increased fuel prices. Cooking gas, the average person earning $70,000 a month, now paying $6,000 for a bottle of gas. For many of us, we have to buy 2 bottles a month. So $12,000 out of your salary, bloops. Are you making out with what? 58? Your rent is above that in most cases. But this government doesn't care about that. What this government cares about is big fit and giving subsidies to people who they see as their enablers. They don't care. And for as long as Guyanese sit back and accept, they will not care. In the US, for example, prior to now, if gas prices went up by a dime, a cent, there were protests. Streets were blocked. Motorists blocked streets. Hamburg traffic complained about the gas price. Right? In a country that has a better standard of living than us, a better quality of life than us. But here in Guyana, we're prepared to sit back and say, oh God, boy, last week I buy gas of $4,500. Now we got to $5,700. Oh God, boy, garlic was $2.40 a pound. Now $1,000 plus. It increased 4 times in less than a week. You recognize that? We are not protesting. We are not crying out in the true sense. Right? We just going with the flow. Garlic price gone up 4 times. It means we're going to use less garlic. We're going to use less garlic. Gas prices increased. It means you're going to cook less. Or some people say they're going back to fireside, cow mouth. Why are you allowing a government to force you to take retrograde steps to survive in a country that is earning income way above what it was accustomed to 2 years ago? Why? Would you, as an individual, let's say a child, or let's say a spouse, would you be willing to go back to using coal pot, which you used to do when your husband was earning $50 a week, in a time when he is now earning $200 a week? Your husband's income has increased 4 times. And he's now telling you, sweetheart, you must go back and use coal pot. Will you accept that? A simple analogy, will you? I don't think you would. And so why is it, when there's more money coming to your economy, you're allowing the policies or a lack of policies, absence of policies on the part of your government, to force you back, to make you take retrograde steps? Something has got to be wrong with us. Something has got to be. Listen, we are protesting for increased wages and salaries. We are protesting the high-handed and discriminatory nature of the government. We're protesting the fact that the government is taking our resources to fatten one section of the society that it favors and it believes favors it. Now prices are skyrocketing. Government is doing nothing to ease the burden on us, and we're protesting that either. Is it that we like to be abused? Is this the abused wife syndrome, whatever they call it? That we have become so accustomed to abuse that we won't lift a finger to change a thing? Something's wrong with us. We gotta be a set of dickheads. Or the government has a set of dickheads. It's one out of the two. Are we the dickheads, or the government has a set of dickheads? Do we like abuse, or are we being abused? Where's the protection for citizens? The unions are absent. I don't know if they are comatose or dead. The workers themselves are absent from the protest lines. I don't know if they are comatose or dead. But the abuse continues. And the abuse is not only coming from the politicians a lot of you voted for. It is coming from people who are allowed to come into this country as foreign investors, making glorious promises to the Guyanese people. I recently learned that BOSAI, which controls the Guyana Manganese Incorporated, a company which came here sometime around, at least the manganese aspect of it, sometime around 2018. Promising to employ at least 500 Guyanese, is now employing Guyanese under slave-like conditions. Slave-like conditions. These conditions are known to the powers that be in government. Polari Jones, the Minister of Labor, is aware of the abuse of Guyanese workers at Guyanese Manganese Incorporated. But apparently no action is being taken. I don't know who this is. Go there hung up. Right? Polari Joe cannot find the time of day to investigate and have corrected that which is happening over at Guyana Manganese Incorporated, GMI, owned and controlled by BOSAI. So the politicians here are not only abusing us, they are allowing others to abuse us. They're engaging Guyanese in a threesome against their will. This morning I'm using a lot of sexual innuendos, dickhead and threesome and so on, because I got a dickhead story to tell y'all. Right? The union, GAU. But look at the union now. GAU. Isn't GAU the PPP union? Isn't GAU very, very, very effective when it comes to protesting for increasing wages and salaries at Gaisuko? Maybe it's the only place where GAU gets its way. How about that? Y'all ever thought about that? very effective union when it comes to representing sugar workers. As soon as they call strike, within days they get relief for their workers. But here it is, a foreign entity abusing the members of GAWU. And GAWU has no impact. Is it a case of cronyism in that because GAWU is so tightly in bed with the PPP, as soon as they strike at Gaisuko, they get what they want? But when they have to deal with a private entity named Ghana Manganese Incorporated, they're toothless? Y'all assess that for yourselves. Assess that for yourselves. Because the failure of GAWU in this instance is leaving the workers unprotected. You know what it is to engage in a threesome unprotected. Somebody could end up dead, badly wounded, injured, maimed for life. I don't hear Guyanese calling on Polori Joe to act or resign. And people are asking, where's the Minister of Labor? Polori Joe is the Minister of Labor. Can't tell when last you heard a man. Over the GMI, let me share with you, for example, what workers are putting up with. There are vacancy for excavator operators in the Northwest. These are the terms of employment. In order to be interviewed for this job, you have to travel to Matthews Ridge. The company will pay your flight. It will book your flight for you to go to Matthews Ridge. And it insists that when you go, you walk with everything that is necessary for you to start work. Right? Whatever you think is required for your comfort once you are employed, you're advised to walk with it when going for the interview. Because so long as you're successful at the interview, you're expected to start work the next day, or immediately, as a matter of fact. Dependent on the time of the day, you can either start work right away or the next day. If you don't succeed, then they fly you back out the next morning. Good? If you don't succeed, they fly you back out the next morning. Nothing is really wrong, in my mind, with that arrangement. Come for the interview. If you think you're going to succeed, walk with your things to start work as soon as you are accepted. We are bringing you at our cost, our expense to the interview. And if you fail, we're sending you back at our expense. But once we employ you, you become our property. And so we will give you a room and a bed. As if you're in prison, you will get a room and a bed. You must bring your own sheet and your own pillow. So if you want a pillow, you must walk with it where you're going. Your bed has to get sheets. You must walk with your sheets. Once employed, you will work for 2 months straight. 2 months straight. You hear what I'm saying? 2 months straight you will work for. No day off, no time off. 2 months straight you will work. And then after your 2 months of work, you will get 10 days leave. Isn't that a wonderful condition of work? No. There's a catch. You will get 10 days leave without pay. So we're going to work you for 60 days. We're going to pay you for your 60 days. You can't get no time off, etc. And after 60 days, you will get 10 to rest and recuperate at your expense. Rest and recuperate at your expense. We're not going to give you a blind cent. You're not getting paid leave, in other words. Right? 2 weeks, 10 days, no paid leave. Unpaid leave. That's what you will get. Some people might find it favorable. But how are you being fed while you're there? How are you going to eat? What are the arrangements for your meals? We will give you 1 meal a day. You see, them boys say a lot of gangsters around Georgetown, a lot of the small time cook around Georgetown, commit crimes to get locked up, to be in prison. Because they say in prison, they say this is where it is, not where it is. In that they know that they will get 3 square in prison without having to go and look for it. But when you go and you work with GMI, they say here it is. The rest you have to wonder where it is, because we will give you 1 meal a day. And you got a choice. You got a choice. You could take this meal for tea, breakfast, or dinner. You know, we guys like say tea, breakfast, and dinner. So we ain't giving you tea, breakfast, and dinner. We're giving you tea, breakfast, or dinner. You choose which one you want. Right? But we only giving you one. The other 2, you got to provide for yourself. Right? The other 2, you have to provide for yourself. And here's the catch. If you provide your own meals, you will get a meal allowance. I don't know how much it is. You will get a meal allowance if you provide your own meals. Not I said I don't know how much it is. I don't know how compensatory it will be. But if you accept the 1 meal that GMI will provide, whether it's tea, breakfast, or dinner, you're not entitled to a meal allowance. If you accept the 1 meal, you're not entitled to a meal allowance. Right? How do they pay? What is the salaries? You will only know your salary after you've been interviewed and succeed. Right? We will only tell you how much you can get paid if you are a successful applicant. Okay? Now, if this is not unprotected sex, if this is not abuse, if this is not a threesome without protection, because the government is doing nothing for you, the foreign nationals are abusing you, and the government is partaking, because they bring them in the first place, or they have oversight on the company's conduct in the first place. It is either we have a set of dickheads in government, or we ourselves are dickheads, because we are accepting this abuse. Sherrod said some time ago that we pump him, but we ain't feeling it. I am starting to think that we producing oil, but we are being we are being sexually abused without lubricants. That is what is happening in this country, and people are sitting back and accepting it. There are lots of people who are flocking to go and apply for the jobs because there's no alternative for them, or that is what they tell themselves, there's no alternative for them. What is prescribed by the Occupational Safety and what do we call it? OSH. Right? What the labor laws of this country says. I know for a fact that the labor laws say if you work 8 hours, that's your normal duty. You're entitled to 1 hour lunch. 1 hour lunch break. If you work 12 hours, you're entitled to, I think, overtime pay and a meal. So once you cross your 8 hour, you're entitled to a meal plus overtime pay. Or something to that extent. I'm trying to remember the exact thing. Right? And if you work double, then you're entitled to double pay and 2 meals. Somebody who dealing with this employment issue, somebody who is versed in the labor laws can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember when I was doing my industrial relations and social studies certificate, that is one of the things I had to study. And so I might have a little wrong here, a little wrong here, but I am sure that once workers are working beyond a certain time to start with, they're entitled to meals. That's number one. Number two, I have had the experience of working with companies in the interior. And the general attitude when working with companies in the interior is that they provide you with 3 meals. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In some instances, afternoon snack is on the charts. But in extreme instances, you would have to take care of your snacks. Your mid-afternoon snack and mid-morning snack and so on. But you get at least tea, breakfast, and dinner. Because understand this. As an individual, it is not convenient, nor is it even practical for you to provide your own meals in those far-off locations. If you find a shop there, the cost of the items will be extremely high. Extremely high. If there are no shops there, the cost of getting the items in will be extremely high. And so when companies come and they employ our citizens and put them under these austerity measures, and those sitting at the Labor Department are doing nothing about it, the only conclusion you could come to is that they are a set of dickheads. When the big bad Gahoo, who could just sneeze in the sugar industry and get what they want, cannot get a better arrangement for these workers who they represent at GMI, you know that they're a set of dickheads. And since the politicians and the union representatives and the labor officials are allowing this injustice to continue, they all are a set of dickheads. And the workers themselves are a set of dickheads. Because let me tell you this, production can't take place without labor. Production can't take place without labor. But there's a downside to that, right? When they dump tools, it's likely that they will be dismissed on all kinds of conditions. And again, the Labor Department will fail to represent their causes. Right? Again, the Labor Department will fail to represent their causes, and so they will find themselves on the breadline. And another set of dickheads will take their place. But y'all know me? I love a good strike. I love a good protest. I am saying stand up for something. Or you're going to lie down for anything. Stand up for something. Or you're going to lay down for anything. I understand that they kept there. GMI. The locals are housed in, I was about to say lodging-like conditions, but maybe lodges were better kept and maintained than the living quarters of the locals. While the foreigners, Samuel may go here later, I say Gaou. Gaou, Samuel. Pay attention in class. Gaou. The big, powerful sugar belt union who could get the government to jump out in the middle of the night and fix problems at Gaisuko can't get GMI to respect the rights of workers. Dickheads, you call them. Right? Did I lose my train of thought? Yeah, let's say Oh, yes. The living conditions of the locals apparently are pre-emancipation quality. While the foreigners are living in conditions that perhaps are like 5-star or 3-star hotels. They get maids and cleaners. The locals best clean their lodgy, or they're going to live in filth. The quality of meals provided to locals are different to those to foreigners. But Polori Joe and the old clique in the cabal have no interest in investigating and remedying the situation. Okay? David Ramesh is saying he understands that in the interior, the company provides meals. But the cost of the meals are deducted from your salaries. Never have I encountered that. Like I said, your mid-afternoon snack and so on, in some instances you have to deal with that. And so if there's a talk shop, you can go to the talk shop and take what you want. And it can be kept on record. And that cost is deducted from your salaries. But in terms of your tea, breakfast, and dinner, the company takes responsibility for that. Right? Abiona Washington is saying at Digicel every 2 hours you get a coffee break. And Digicel is not in the interior. Right? I think Digicel is Irish. Is that what I remember? I think it's an Irish company. When the Yap is asking where are the unions, some of y'all best pay attention in this class. Anyhow, it is 8 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. Let me tell you all about a dickhead. A real dickhead. You know, I usually say, if some people's political careers are to be brought to an end in this country, it is the sexual organ which will result in it. I always say that. A lot of them in politics, in high office, abuse their offices for sexual favors. Never mind, plenty of them that turn out to be disappointing. Good. A lot of them use their political offices to demand sexual favors. They used to accuse PNC and PNC ministers of demanding sex, especially from Indian girls, to employ them in the ministries and so in the past. Yes, I've heard the PNC, the PPP make that accusation time and time again. Time and time again. But in this year, 2022, and for as long as the PPP has been in power, the PPP ministers themselves have been using their offices, and not only the ministers, but permanent secretaries and higher-ups, and those who are politically connected, they've been using their access to power to demand sexual favors from citizens of this country for them to enjoy what is their basic human rights. The right to be employed, the right to earn. A lot of them have been using that. You go to one of these politicos to have a problem resolved, and they ask you when they could make the booking for. Yes, it's a fact. The history is there. A lot of people don't like to talk about it, but I'll give you a couple of instances. Y'all remember that a man had to be fired from the Jagdeo government because he impregnated a 13-year-old Amerindian? Yes. He was dismissed as minister and brought back as a ministerial advisor. So in short, his behavior was condoned by the PPP. Chandapal, or whatever her name, head of the Women Progressive Organization, Vinya Prasad, head of the Dharmic Sabha, or whatever, Priya, and all the women around the PPP, they are guilty of condoning such behaviors from the men in the PPP. Yes, somebody's reminding me of the regional officer. I think, let them that story, that shot the young lady in his vehicle because she didn't want to give it up. Have you heard of that story recently? I can't remember hearing of it recently. Then there was the official in Region 5 or somewhere in Barbados. I spoke about that story. I have the file on my desk. Who was harassing a married woman to have an affair with him. And because she refused, he pushed her around and tried to push her out. And she decided that she was going to report it to the necessary authorities. I think that was the local government commission she was working for. Or the person was representative of the local government commission. Yes, they're using their political office to demand sexual favors from citizens. Using your money from your coffers to satisfy their dildo desires. The same dildo minister, when he was PS, I think he was PS in the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. The Amerindians can chronicle for you the amount of abuse, sexual and otherwise, that they encountered on his hand. He's at it again. He's at it again. Somebody sent it to my inbox. A Facebook post from what's her name? Sharmila? Oladoy. Shanaz Hussein. And her post says, my next post will be about a sexual predator who's a senior cabinet minister within the Guyana government. This isn't a political matter for me, but I've decided to share my experiences with this individual so that women and girls can be aware and know how to protect themselves from persons like this. The things I will highlight: how this individual uses Facebook platform to hunt and prey on young females. He looks to see who likes his comments and uses that as the opportunity to inbox you. Then he asks for your WhatsApp and the opportunity to meet you in person. He would send you pictures of himself in bed, etc. Tells you that he needs you in his bed at night and what he wouldn't do to you if he had you. Sends nude pics of his naked, circumcised dick when he is in bed at night. Wants a video call you so that he can show you his body parts that are still alive. Because I think he is brain dead. Wants you to visit his city and spend a week at a sleep-in hotel with you so that he can take care of you. There's going to be lots more details according to this post. Well, I've seen some of the other details. I've seen screenshots of conversations with the dildo minister telling people to come over and how badly you need them, and so on and so forth. But that is what your taxpayers' money is doing. When the dildo minister is supposed to be an official government business, he's lying down in hotel rooms and messaging women, praying them from Facebook and trying to get under their skirts because of his ministerial and political connections. Be aware. Be aware. They got a lot of dickheads in government. A lot of them, they're incompetent. They can't perform their duties, but they're using their political connections to try to lure women into their beds. I damn well dare say that a lot of them might be adding to their political disappointments. They already disappoint citizens politically, and now some of them are offering to further traumatize citizens by luring them into their beds with taxpayers' money. It is now 70 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. Are we a nation of dickheads? Will we continue to accept these abuses with no protection? You all decide. The lines are opened. Not right away. Soon enough, though. I got to get some drums. Y'all know me. I like some drums. And so let's have some drums. And then we'll open up the lines. Where is my drum? Come on, y'all. Give me some drums. What y'all waiting for? Right? That's the story. 6225933 would be the number to call. Let the ancestors be awake. asking me why they can't comment on each other's posts and so on. I don't know. I seriously don't know. Right? Let me make a confession. I'm not as technical as y'all think I am, you know. I don't trouble with Facebook. Right? I do not interfere with people's ability to post and so on. I'm the kind of guy, I like stability. When I set it up, I leave it. They say if it's not broken, don't fix it. And so any restrictions you're having, they're not from me. What I'll do, I'll endeavor in the course of the day to check and see if anything has changed, but I doubt better. Right? Somebody is saying that back in the days, big boys in the Guyana police force used to demand sexual favors, some other ranks and so on. It's not back in the days, it continues. Y'all don't think it has gone anywhere. Y'all forget the accusations against Karim Bash? The 3 young recruits? One to y'all, man. Y'all gotta be up to the time. The file is on my desk. Call A Live, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. I am a bit under the weather, but I'm going to still try to make my comment. Listening to the opening of the program where Dr. Hines spoke about, he was talking about the different things and the petitioners. So I think that was it. That won't iron out itself. Then he moved down to the business of the COVID thing and the closing of the country and now the reopening of the country. Since the install regime took over, they had the country open up because under APNU, Ramjitan had instituted curfews, and those curfews were well enacted, and people used to be penalized for breaking the curfew. You used to travel on the buses at a smaller number and also on the cruise ship speedboats. But since the PPP came in, they said that was a Granger thing. Else it ran where it is. Now they got it open. Now with this new person coming, you hear people crying now, putting up on the life. Our bottle of gas is $5,700. And with all gas price raise, you look at the response that foreign artist is going to be getting, who is coming from a country with all the worries in the Ukraine and Russia there. Their country is protected by subsidies so that they could have the war could have a minimal effect on the much needed items as foodstuff and even gas prices. Now moving along, when you spoke about a lot of people who giving sex a higher if you want anything, that is so true. Many men, when they get to a position of authority, they just tell themselves that they are in authority and the crutch got more authority on female persons. I'm not saying you, but in many cases that is happening. And you have got to remember that the install regime is not what you call them, a law-abiding set of people. Because if they were law-abiding, they would not have been in power. Because they would have known that they have not won this election and they should remain where they are. But once they get in a country, they tell themselves that they're in a grab it for them. And everything they're trying to do to the utmost higher level of, what you call it, lawlessness. Now the other day, I think it's 2 days ago, they put in the wicked witch of the West right and tell them go to the market and say people must not go to the market. And by the time that you see all the policemen running by the market, she shouldn't do that. She should be glad because she said that they must go in. So that is what's going on. And these people, they are running amok because they tell themselves they get this second chance. They don't know how long it will last and as much damage as they could do in this second chance. They are prepared to do and they are doing it. Don't matter what people say, they are destroying this country. And the couple mornings that they are there, it is more destruction than the farm 23 years. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Call A Live, good morning.
Morning, Kodaki. I'm going to veer off slightly. Guyanese are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Simple and straight. As Boosie, the ethnicity of the people there, they're black. Not predominantly Indian, predominantly black. That's true. We keep using the word we are an oil-producing country. We are not an oil-producing country. We got to be careful with words. You produce something from a raw material. We are facilitator of oil explorers. Because we don't produce nothing, we don't produce no raw. The thing is already in the ground. Like coltan in the ground in Congo, and they use it to mine it, and they use it to make the cell phone electronics, right? And one more thing. If we're going to say that we want to be an inclusive government or have an inclusive government and it's part of our constitution, blah, 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 we should not use the word opposition. Because just the mere connotation of the word is, okay, opposition, you're there to oppose, right? That's one thing. We should use the word minority government because you have an input too. And it's gonna change the psyche of people, the way we think, right? If we stop using that word, just let it marinate a bit. You don't have to answer to it. I'm here for correction, but let it marinate a bit. That's all.
I see your wisdom. Have a good day. I want to dedicate this song to the dildo man, because the reality is, when you have a sexual pervert, listen, sexual perversion is a mental issue, We talk about mental health issues. And sexual perversion is a mental health issue. Y'all don't take it lightly. And to put people in authority, power, positions of authority, with sexual perversion as one of their mental health issue, is to do a disservice to the citizens of this country. In other states, this man would have been long gone. I don't know what he's still doing as a minister. Right? When one could stand up in the National Assembly and tell a female MP, you need a dildo, it speaks to the mind of that individual. And now here it is. If you have doubts, you have records of this individual pursuing people sexually on the internet. Right? This is a pervert. You don't know for a fact how many underage girls he has gone after. And y'all got to consider that. Because the PPP and their goons like to abuse people's underage children in the name of power. But this is why he has to deal with the dildo. Yeah, Beanie Man. For the dildo minister.
Girl style. Whoa, there. Whoa, there. Whoa, there. It's a bitty teeny weeny little willy man. Y'all them have to request him and them go long. No, it's a bitty teeny weeny little willy man. We know all the man they give it in a parade. Big woman designed for make big me strain. Look up boy no pay put a man by your brain. Most big woman them love the long sugar cane. Some love carrot but it's just not the same. Man don't know if you pull up on no sex and perform. African deliver what the girl them demand. 5 minutes business them days they can. Unless you want that girl come a road come call you. It's a bitty teeny weeny little willy man. Y'all them have to request him and
Yes, the dildo minister. Maybe that is why he's so fascinated with dildos. But on a serious note, I would like to hear folks like Chandapal and all of them call on their powers that be for this dildo minister to be removed from his offices. I shared a part of the post with you from the young lady. Let me give you the other part. Let me give you the other part. It says, this matter has traumatized me. And I reached out to the women I follow online in the government. Women like Priya Manichand, Vindhyavasini Prasad, Arya Ali, and I got no response. Let me read it again. This matter has traumatized me, and I reached out to the women I follow online in the government. Women like Priya Manichand, Vindhyavasini Prasad, Arya Ali, and I got no response to date. The assault on women has to be stopped, no matter who it is. Right? I don't know where Red Thread is. I don't know where the Women Progressive Organization is. I don't know where is the National Congress of Women and all of these women's groups, but I think the time has come. I think the time has come for these women organizations supported by their men. Supported by their men to get this pervert out of the seats of government who is using taxpayers' money to fund the sexual perversion and using political authority in government to protect himself from prosecution for these sexual perversive behavior. It's now 8 hours 33. The dildo minister must go. The sexual predator online must go. I remember one caller saying, when we were talking about the dildo issue, one caller alleging that this dildo minister is from a family where rape took place, where the father is alleged to have raped a family member. And if this is the family and this is his psyche, we ought not to have those people in public offices. Call your live, good morning.
Morning, Kadaki, and morning, Guyana. What you have been talking about for the last hour or so is just so, I'm trying to figure out the words to describe it. Mafia-style government, and the people simply refuse to do anything. And when you understand it, right, what the PPP party have done over the 23, now 25, 26 years, have ingrained their way of life on the people of Guyana. And simply they believe that's what it is. That's just stink and dirty. I mean, I'm telling you, there are very few Indians that are on the up and up. But if the majority of them are actually accepting that, and then we have our African brothers and sisters bringing up the rear, accepting that, we are simply in a failed country. Imagine all those acts and all those illegal stuff that you just talked about, and they're still in government, and the people are just it's like nothing. It makes your blood boil to know all what's taking place, and people are just sitting back taking it. It's ridiculous that you guys are accepting mediocrity. Roads being constructed, no sidewalks, no nothing. They're just putting down tar on the orto what, and then accepting that. No lights. You got pedestrian, you got cars and donkey carts traveling on a narrow road. And all they're saying that they're coming under budget and doing it before time. And and simply just accepting that, man. You would explain the RU shot a young woman in the stomach, nothing heard about it. And it will continue. So obviously, it's a cancer. And what do you do with cancer? You gotta cut it out. So if you don't cut it out, I guess the cancer is gonna be around forever until the Guyanese people do something. And that's my take.
Thank you, caller. You're singing, Sandra. Yes, the young lady prefers to die with her dignity. She prefers to die with her dignity. I must congratulate her and respect her bravery for publicizing the perversion of the dildo minister. Voice note.
The new generation in Guyana, black people especially, they are blasted lazy. You know, I had a discussion with an Indian man some time ago, and he told me if all them could go back to India, black man dead too hungry in Guyana because they not plant rice, they don't do no farming at all. And in the midst of what they are going through in that country, you can still find them walking the street, whining their ass. I think if Russia should be throwing those bombs in Guyana, in the midst of those bombs, black women and men would still be running behind the man, whining them ass, regardless. And that's all I have to say.
This is an extreme opinion. I must say it is extreme. I don't necessarily endorse it, right? But I don't have the energy to even discuss it. This is one of the fallacy that black people, black people are lazy and so on. And they don't do this and they don't do that. I disagree. I'm soon to make a visit to Berbice. East and West Berbice. Because there are rice farmers in East and West Berbice. But when they detail for you the challenges, right? When they detail for you the challenges that they are faced with as rice farmers, you self would marvel at the fact that they're even still in the business of farming rice. I talk about how many hundreds of acres of lands are owned by blacks in those areas, but they leased the Indians to production. But I've also had discussions with those those landowners, and they explain to you the challenges. For example, the owners of the tractors and combines are mostly Indians. And so they leave their lands last, black people land last to plow, despite the fact that they're paying. They leave their rice last to reap, so it gets overripe, despite the fact that they're paying. The millers who provide fertilizers on credit, in most instances, discriminate against black rice farmers, so they don't get to fertilize their crops on time to get maximum yield. So there are lots and lots of challenges that the blacks have to put up, has to face. Some of them persevere, others don't. But the reality is, the system is stacked against them. Right? The system is stacked against them. And it's a system that is designed in most instances not to only make them fail, but to put them on the brink that they would want to sell out. Right? Extension officers discriminate in the provision of their services. And this is not necessarily by choice, but by instruction and policy. So these are some things that people have to be aware of. And stop labeling people black man lazy. Every ethnicity got some lazy son of a guns. Per capita, a lot of people will say they're more lazy black people than they're lazy Indians. But it's not necessarily true that Indians come up against the oppressive behavior that blacks are faced with. And so the playing field is not really level. It's imbalanced. Good, so I don't necessarily agree with that caller. Anyhow, let's move on. 6225933 is the number to call. Call, let's talk the thing. Voice note.
Lucky, when I worked at Gaisuku, I was told similar in the situation what that one said. That you pull a tarp, right? And what you do You play some music, and every head that you see jumping up when you move that tarp is a black man head. Well, my reply to them, yeah, but the heads that are now moving are down, sleeping, drunk.
Call all the lines.
And sleeping with the daughters. And this who? An Indian man down at the bottom there. Cause he ain't jumping up, but he jumping up. He jumping on the daughter. This way they used to, this way they normally jump. Perverts.
Call it live, good morning.
Good morning, Kadaki. Kadaki, I just saw somebody writing and says, oh, like you were talking about how the farmers, they're doing things against people. And someone says happening in New Amsterdam right now. You know, Kadaki, we can keep talking about this thing all the time. But seeing that we're coming in to get some money, I think the opposition, they should try their utmost best to invest in all of these plowing equipment. This should be their next approach. Try to buy up from these farming equipment so at least they could able to rent out to black people if the Indian people are not treating the black people properly. This is what they need to do. Things that they are fighting them against, let them pull their money, their resources together and buy these things. Or the opposition should get involved and try their utmost best. Who has the money to put down and get these equipment so people cannot stand on top of you at all times? They need to change things around now because there's utmost nonsense that up to this day and age, people encouraging other people to trample on them and step on them. You know, everybody wants the country to move forward and let all of us to work together. But you have to see what it is. You cannot say Kadaki is helping Tom Jones and deep down inside, Kadaki is not willing to help the next person who's standing over there. He's only wanting to help Tom Jones alone. And this is what people in Guyana need to sit down and catch the reality to say, well, look, this is wrong, but we are the one who is stifling our conscience. Yes, they have good black people. Yes, they have good Indian people. But we have to see it broad a line right straight across the board what it is actually happening. We don't need people to come and parcel out thing and say, well, this is wrong, the next is wrong. We know that it is wrong, but we're trying to make it work, but it's not working. So we have to find other ways and means to help our brother and sister. It doesn't matter. We have to stand up now. Now is the time. We getting oil and gas and what it is for us. It's nothing. We are not enduring anything. Other people, there's some of our Indian brothers are inheriting that. And what the other set of people are inheriting? Nothing. So we have to stand up and see what it is actually going on. Kadaki, have a blessed day and take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller. Have a good day yourself. 6225933 is the number to call you. Tune to the Buxtonian Morning Time. We're talking about dickheads, abuse, and no protection. That's what we're talking about. The Delo minister must be made to go. He's a pervert. And Guyanese money is used to fund this perversion. The lines are open. Don't be shy. Call and let's talk. You remember the one who wanted to strip and slap? All of their perversions they bring out into the public by their comments. Call A Live, good morning.
Hey, good morning to all. This is our problem as a people, right? That guy sounds like an adult, and he come on here to spill bull crap with some Indian man till he and he come out here for preachers gospel. Listen, we problem is we got a rich history. We do almost anything any other race do, and in most cases better. But we people now, the tech will like the ball with some other people spread and run with it. These people know we ability, and this is why in most cases they're trying to keep us down. Look at all of them different towns, thriving towns in the USA, that white people just see black people thriving and covet it, end up fabricating some stupidness and end up overrunning the town, loot, kill the people, boarding them to the ground. These people know their ability. It's only we seem to don't know it. So, and then just look at what going on in Ukraine, right? I want no guys in Guyana look at it. The exact same thing what they're doing to the African students, they're doing to the Indian students. Because you know why? White people see us as the same thing. So, look at run all about us, pour out the boulder one thing. It's up to we for believe it or not. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, caller. Line remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. Okay, it's now 10 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. And the lines remain open. Remember, on the 23rd of April, there's going to be a concert at KAMS Place. It's called Countryside Laugh. The featured play is The Lottery. You're going to have some of Guyana's best comedians on show. You're going to have lots of stand-up comedy and poems and so on. There's a person, Zalaika Bess, I think the name is. Zalaika Bess. Gas prices are soaring everywhere except in Barbados. In times of crisis, good leaders design solutions. In times of crisis, good leaders design solutions. Poor leaders design excuses. Poor leaders design excuses. And foolish leaders design new banknotes. Where do your leaders fall, guys? Are they designing excuses or new banknotes? Or they're doing both? I think they're doing both. So we have poor leaders and foolish leaders alike. Yes, I like this quote by Zalaika. Good leaders in times of crisis design solutions. Poor leaders design excuses, and foolish leaders design new banknotes. When you talk about the rising prices, they're quick to say that prices are rising all over the drug market, all over the world market. They're quick to tell you that the war, the Russian-Ukraine war, is responsible for rising prices. But are they quick to tell you what the solutions are? What policies they are putting in place locally to ease the burden on the citizens of this country? No, they ain't got time with that. They're quick to tell you about how many new and shiny buildings they want to build, and how many hydroelectric plants they want the Chinese to build, and how many Sioux-like investments they're running after. But they're not offering the Guyanese citizens the solution to these high prices. Like I said yesterday, I think, throughout the pandemic, Guyanese benefited from one, and some Guyanese, let me clarify it, one cash grant to help them alleviate the issues. It was a mere, what was it, $25,000? It's so long ago, I can't even remember. Good. And I believe if that plan wasn't started by the AP and UAFC while in government, Guyanese would not have gotten that money under the PPP. In a country where they're getting, some will argue, a windfall from the petroleum industry. But we sit back and we say things tight. And we're not doing anything about the tightening of things. As a matter of fact, your so-called vice president had cautioned that you should start tightening your belt because things are going to get hard. And so if he knew that from since when he made those utterances, why didn't the government come up with a plan to ease the burden on citizens? Those are just some questions I have in mind. At 6 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour, let me leave you with singing Sandra. She said she prefers to die with her dignity. And a lot of women, I guess, would rather die with their dignity than be insulted, preyed upon, disappointed by the dildo minister.
Okay, roll the drums.
Uno no se baby shama for fit tell no. Uno no se baby shama for.
Final caller for the day. Call your life.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to stress on yesterday's program, but I did not hear Mr. Hines answer my proposal.
He did. Let me tell you what he said.
Yes.
And he answered while you were on the line. He said both of you are sharing the same ideas and he doesn't see a need for a debate on the indecency of government. I think that was the topic you proposed? Yes.
Yes.
So he did.
Okay. All right. So he did. Okay. But I'm hopeful one day I'll be able to be on a forum with him as well as others.
Okay.
Because it's very needed. I think it's needed very much. And your program and a few others is very, very educational and informative for the Guyanese population, because the population needs to be more mature and more involved in the affairs of Guyana. Now, we're talking about the fact that things are, getting out of hand in the aspect of rising prices. Now, you said that good leaders make adjustments to, help the citizens, shed some of the expenses. Every government are supposed to take care of their people. It's not the government's money, it's the people's money. And Guyanese need to understand that. They have to demand certain things from their politicians. You cannot sit back and allow them to do what they want to do for you. Take the grant, for example, the cash grant. Now, you don't have to be a scientist or a mathematician to tell you how to distribute the money. The government knows. They know who and who is working. All they could have done for the majority of the population, instead of sending out bags of monies to their friends in their different location, just how you pay these people, it could have been done through direct deposits in their accounts. They know they could have done that. But instead they choose to victimize a certain people. Now, you can't tell me the international community didn't observe that. It's It's easy, it's simple. A direct deposit for every citizen that is working, that you know is registered employee, either by the state or by the private sector. It could have been done, but no. Instead of that, I'm going to victimize a certain group or a certain section of the population. I'm going to send monies out in bags in my so-called strongholds. And you know, the opposition as well as citizens of Guyana sit back and they allow this to happen. Nobody said a word. And Guyana is in no way a undeveloped country. It is. They have access to that information where they could have distribute those monies equitably in the right way. Now, the people who install them, they sit back and they allow them to do this to its citizens. They allow it because they put them there and they can see what they're doing. But everybody now, they want us to focus, and Guyanese need to understand this. No, the focus is not on Guyana, the focus is on Ukraine. The focus is on Ukraine, nothing to do with Guyana. Guyanese could be massacred or slaughtered. Nobody cares. You don't look like the people who are being killed right now, so they don't care. We need to demand more. We cannot demand mediocre. And that's our problem. We don't want to disrupt stuff. You don't want to get anybody angry, but they're making you unhappy. They're making you so unhappy that things can't go right in your home. But it's not, as I would say, it's not your neighbor. It's the government. So we have to demand more for ourselves. Do not demand mediocre. It makes things worse. Kodaki, thank you so much.
Thank you for calling.
Keep up the good work.
I will.
Okay? Thank you.
By God's grace.
Bye-bye. Yes.
Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. You too, bye.
Okay, folks, y'all have a good day. I leave you with singing Sandra. We rather die with dignity.
You want to help to mind your family. You want to help your man financially. But nowadays it's really very hard to get a job as a girl in Trinidad. You're looking out to find something to do. You meet a boss man who promised to help you. But when the man laid down the condition, nothing else but humiliation. You want to see your whole anatomy. You want to see where your doctor never sees. You want to do what your husband never do. Still you will know if these scams will hire you. But if it's all this humiliation, to get a job these days as a woman, whether they go keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity. Some of them done pack up already. Yet they sit down, waiting like McPP, using the power of their cash and position, waiting to abuse and exploit anyone. They tell you what you have to go to bed with you. Become slaves, second wife and deputy. And as the next woman come on the line, he start to tell you you ain't good, you can't whine. They want to see you with some fancy pose. They want to see how you look without your clothes. They want you cock up like a bloody acrobat. The wife at home, they can't ask, she can do that. So before I have to live down tell them they could keep their money, I go keep